So you're in automotive, right? Jim Farley, the CEO at Ford.
Yep.
And I'm sure you've seen this podcast. I mean, I'll give Jim Farley this. I'll give him this credit. Okay. Farley went on a podcast last August, and the light bulb had finally come on for him. He goes on a podcast last August. I'll have the team share the podcast with you if you haven't seen it before. And he says we lost. You know, we Tesla beat us and we can't catch them. We're gonna join them. We're not gonna catch them. And he lays out a series of decisions that Ford made that put them at a strategic disadvantage in digital and what is holding up their digital transformation. And one of the ones that he highlighted, because they didn't have a digital strategy, because they couldn't clearly articulate how data was going to become the primary commodity in their business, one of the decisions they made downstream was they decided to outsource the intellectual property of their electronic control module and the window control modules to Bosch.
Yeah.
And part of that deal was Bosch would own the data inside the module. So that data that is generated inside those control modules, Ford can't use for their own purposes. Those events that are being captured. Something as simple as how many times someone is putting a window up and down.
Yeah.
That, by the way, that data is valuable.
Yeah.
And guess who owns it? Bosch does. Ford doesn't own it. If Ford had a digital strategy, then the rest of the organization would have known, hey, guess what? How are we capturing? Are we putting in, or does that switch obviously goes to IO over CAN bus? But
Yeah.
are we putting InfluxDB on board on each car and then sending it when we do the OTAs, we're collecting the time series data off this car so that we're collecting the number of times that a window has cycled in a car? Of course not. Ford's not doing that. Guess who is doing that? Tesla's doing that, right? Tesla is literally capturing every single event on the car, including the number of times I look left and right, and they're using that data to go back to the U.S. Department of Transportation to say, you know, those side mirrors that you mandate that we have on these cars? Guess what? A driver only looks at those side mirrors once every N minutes, and they're making the case for why you shouldn't have to have the side mirrors, like digitally. Something that the Department of Transportation can't even argue about. That's my point. My point is because Ford didn't have a digital strategy, they made decisions down the road that put them at a strategic disadvantage that made their CEO acknowledge Tesla beat us.
The big OEMs outsourced the design of the car. So they became assemblers. I mean, they don't even make the components, right? All the components arrive at the factory, they assemble it, and they become assemblers and marketers. That's it.
Yes.
And then when it came to, oh my goodness, I need to design a new car, pieces from existing pieces of cars and like slap them together. I mean, ABS is a good example where Bosch dominate. I mean, most traditional cars, ABS controllers are Bosch, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't even know how many times the brake pedal's been pressed.
I think what most of your audience needs to hear is this. Manufacturing is not manufacturing is not manufacturing. Sounds good.
Sorry about that. Luckily we're not tech people, right? You're automating business decisions, not processes on the shop floor.
Correct. That you should have already done that. Industry 4 assumes that you've automated equipment. It assumes now we come across lots of companies that aren't even industry 3 yet, or maybe they're in their early maturity of industry 3, and primarily because they didn't have a lot of competition in the market. Maybe they had a patent that protected them. Maybe maybe it's just a niche market where no one wanted to compete, and so therefore they had no incentive to innovate. That is to automate the industrial process. How I would argue they had the incentive: better quality, higher efficiency, lower energy usage, all that kind of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it is not about automating industrial processes. That's not industry 4. Industry 4 assumes you've already done that.
Are you saying that you got to do 3 before 4?
No, I'm saying that 4 assumes that you have the data you get from 3.
We're in South Africa, and we actually have a factory in India as well. So we're very much a developing economies business.
Right.
And we've found that certainly from a developed country like the US or the EU, there is that assumption that 3 exists. So I have to automate, and then I start digitizing on top of that. But I think that from our perspective, it's actually a little different in that if I have a manual assembly process, there are things I can do to digitize, whether it be digital work instructions, computer vision to control a sequence, measure the cycle time, have a Bluetooth linear measuring device that can collect the data of a measuring process, for example. So I'm actually digitizing a very manual process to achieve the quality of the process, the data, and I can use that to predict bottlenecks, for example. So I often find when we have a lot of the conversations with leading people in the space, they forget about what I would often remind them of is 80% of the world's population sits on this side of the wall, where we are actually digitizing manual processes, not automating manual processes.
I mean, you know what's crazy?
Yep.
I work with a lot of people in Africa. And I consult with a lot of, but we have never, we've never done a project in Africa. I've never actually been inside a manufacturing facility. I mean, I've spent more time in Chennai. I've probably been to 100 manufacturing facilities in Chennai, India. Okay. Never one in Africa. You know what I mean? And so I'm really excited about the trip, actually.
When you visit us, we're going to have to show you an African production line.
I can't wait to see it.
Given the fact that you were recently at Hanover, so I watched some of your feedback. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
I've been to Hanover a few times. It's a massive show. And I sometimes struggle to get value out of it because it's just like too big and a lot of stuff that's going on. But I wanted to use that, your recent experience in Hanover, to kind of help us understand what is Industry 4.0 from a US perspective versus an EU perspective. Because I've heard you speak about the differences. So I really appreciate your take on what it is from the two perspectives and why they're different.
It's a really important question, and so from again, I'll keep the audience here as the plant manager and above. Yep. You know, the fundamental difference. Well, let's start with Industry 4 first. Like, what is Industry 4? So in the United States, Industry 4 is synonymous with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the natural evolution of technological advancement in industry. So if Industry 0 was the steam engine and Industry 1 was the assembly line, or if Industry 0 was the printing press and 1 was the steam engine and 2 was the assembly line and 3 was industrial automation in 1969. 4 is the automation of the business process. So 3 was the automation of the industrial process. 4 is the automation of the business process. How do you do that? Well, it's from the convergence of taking the data that you generate on the plant floor and combining it with the data that you generate on the business side, on the IT side, with the OT side, so that you have the complete digital picture of your business. And through that, once we have the complete digital picture, we can then automate decision-making. Things like recipe adjustments, schedule changes, supply chain considerations, which lots to use on which production orders based on past performance of the lots from these vendors versus the lots from those vendors, right? Yeah. The automation of the business decisions. That's what the Fourth Industrial Revolution is all about. In the United States, Industry 4 is really the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It is a focus on automating business decisions. Yeah. In the EU, it's different. In the EU, what they did was at Hannover Messe in 2011, 12, 13, one of those years, they released the Industry 4.0 standard or the vision, which was a theory on how to start with computerization and through these tiered steps, get to a place where you're using machine learning and artificial intelligence to help operate your business. Now, you know, the philosophies in the EU and in the United States are fundamentally different. Okay. Yeah. The EU is primarily focused on sustainability through planned economies. Okay. That's their primary business focus. In the United States.
So what do you mean by planned economies?
Government moving the pieces around government in the European Union, government plays a huge role in industry, right? In the United States, outside of life sciences and the automotive industry, government's really not involved. Okay. In the United States, we basically, you're looking for innovators to come out of the population and to come up with things that no one, it's the old adage. Henry Ford said, if I had gone to the people with a horse and a carriage and asked them, what do you want? They would have said, I want a faster horse. Yeah. They would have never said, I want a car. In the United States, before the automobile was invented, Henry Ford is the one who came up with the innovation. That isn't really how it works in the European Union. In the European Union, it is really a collaboration between government and industry on what to do next, where to invest our dollars next, what really matters to us. And in the European Union, sustainability is a primary focus, and it's the primary focus. They do that through planned economies. So it is very difficult to innovate in the European Union. It's actually very, very hard. It doesn't mean innovation's not happening. It just means there's a lot more barriers in play, a lot more. In the United States, innovation's kind of easy. It's kind of what we're good at. In the US, we're really good at innovating. And so that's how you see this bifurcation between what Industry 4 is in the EU and what it is in the United States. However, the implications of both approaches are the same. The implications are, what are we trying to achieve? Well, what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to take the technological advancements that have happened all over the world, and we want to use them for the good of all humanity. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Competition in the market, and competitors in the market is simply a function of limited resources. At the end of the day, we want to get to a point where there's an abundance of resource where we don't have to compete for it. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what all this technological advancement's about, in service of. But for the plant manager, what is Industry 4? It's about a digital strategy, developing a digital strategy for automating business decisions.
And so we try to focus these conversations around that audience and why they should actually care about digital. And because I think there's a white space between the leadership and the guys on the ground that actually are learning how to do these things. And unless we fill that white space, the revolution, as they call it, probably will take longer than what we all want it to be. So, correct. And there's no ways I'd be able to ask you the kind of detailed questions on how. I'm the wrong person for that. We've got people in our team that would be best suited. So if it's okay with you, I really wanted to focus the persona that we talk to be that plant executive, the plant manager persona, and why they should actually care. And what I tell the plant leaders that I interact with is the green block is what you have to own yourself.
Correct.
It's not that if you don't have the skills to understand it or even create the green block, you're always going to be beholden to somebody else.
I built my first UNS in 2005. I designed it from 2003 to 2005, and the first unified namespace was actually dynamic data exchange. So it was data highway plus into a data aggregator, and then DDE into an Excel spreadsheet. So the unified namespace actually was first built in an Excel spreadsheet, and the live events were dynamic data exchange topics in cells. That was the original. But the problem with that was that it was over Data Highway Plus, so it was poll response. And Excel's relationship to the data aggregator was poll response. It wasn't edge driven. The technology didn't even exist yet, And then MQTT became the de facto protocol that we were using starting in 2014, 2015. To your point on the UNS, I have a book called the UNS Handbook that I haven't released yet. Everybody's been asking me about it. Starting this week, I'm going to be releasing it chapter by chapter on LinkedIn. So I've gotten permission from my publisher to release a version on LinkedIn. And actually the prologue will be published tomorrow. The introduction to the book gets published as an article. Yeah.
As soon as I finish I finished the whole book already, but it sounds horrible. So I've got an editor reading it at the moment, and I'm getting such bad feedback.
But that's a good diagram. It's a good way to explain UNS. I always say it's the structure and it's all the events. Yeah, one of the things that we're doing, we're getting ready to do. Well, I'll make a couple of announcements here. So we're doing a conference next year in February, called Prove It 2025, where vendors are it's gonna be held here in Dallas, Texas, at the Westin Galleria, third week in February, the week of February 17th. 3 days, 25 to 40 vendors, plus 300 to 400 end users, all in the same place, where vendors are going to come and they're going to integrate into a unified namespace. Let's say I'm Flow Software, for example, which originates in South Africa. They will be there. Flow, all the vendors are going to get a functional specification. They're going to see the unified namespace that exists. We're going to have a virtual factory based on a facility we have here in Dallas. And every vendor is going to have 16 weeks to build a solution that integrates into an existing unified namespace. And they're going to do a prove it session. They're literally going to go up on stage in front of the 500 to 750 attendees. They're going to have 30 to 45 minutes. What did they build? How long? Why did they build it? How long did it take? And what was the total amount of man hours? And then they're going to answer questions. So prove it. Signups start June 17th. That'll be next February. 3-day conference in Dallas. Unlike any conference you've ever seen before. That's number one. Number two, we're going to be doing this workshop for end users, how to recruit, train, and retain the people who will own your digital infrastructure. And I would say number three, the big one is I'm releasing the UNS handbook, a version of the UNS handbook on LinkedIn starting tomorrow. So the introduction to the book will actually post it as an article tomorrow on LinkedIn. And I don't know if it's being released every 2 weeks, or I don't know what the release schedule is, but it'll be over the summer. So my UNS handbook will be coming out on LinkedIn over the summer. And then the full version will be available Kindle and paperback on Amazon once we're done releasing on LinkedIn.
So the title for this podcast, if it's okay with you, is going to be Industry 4.0, the Industry 4.0 bad boy.
Okay. All right.
Or the Industry 4.0 OG or something.
That worked. It worked. Yeah, I'm okay with whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So how did you get to become the Industry 4.0 bad boy?
I'll say that I've always been, I have an undergraduate degree in sociology in addition to being a double E. So I have a undergraduate in sociology, double E, and then my graduate work is in education. So I've studied a lot of psychology so that I could be really good at understanding sociology. Okay. And I fall in I have a personality trait. If you do an Enneagram on me, I'm an 8. So if you look at my primary personality type is an 8, which is the bad boy, right? I am in the 99th percentile in disagreeableness. So I have a problem with authority. I'm in the 99th percentile. I am the prototype for a change agent. I'm the devil's advocate. I'm the person you put on a team so that the team doesn't fall into groupthink. That's my personality type. Okay. All right. How did I get into this journey? When we started with digital media, our plan was we're seeing the same mistakes over and over again. Like we've been doing digital transformation. I've been doing digital transformation since like 2012 exclusively. All right. I've been in this industry 25 years now. I spent the first half of my career in manufacturing, and then I went to consulting. And when I went to consulting in 2012, I've only done digital transformation. I haven't done automation since 2012. I mean, I've consulted on automation projects, but I haven't written a PLC program since 2011. Okay. I've been doing digital transformation, primarily enterprise class. And I won a major award in 2013 for building the largest standalone SCADA system in the world. And, in 18 months for $1.6 million. It covered 5 states. It had 40,000 devices, 14,000 locations. It had 11 million data points. It had 2,000 concurrent users, 2 million daily alarms. And we built it in 18 months. And the next closest bid, ours was 1.6 million. The next closest bid was 50 million.
Wow.
So everybody wanted to know how we did it. Unified namespace is how we did it. Okay. So I mean that at the end of the day, UNS is how we did it. So from 2013 to 2018, my business exploded. Everybody wanted me to be leading their huge enterprise projects. And that originally started in oil and gas. So from 2013 to 2018, I worked with almost 100 companies. So I had a team, and we had almost 100 companies we worked with in those 5 years. And we saw every single manufacturer, they were all making the same mistakes in their digital transformation journey. It was like they went through two journeys. The first journey was wasting $1 million, $2 million to get absolutely nothing, to realize that the way that their thought process was wrong. Okay. There was a series of mistakes that we kept seeing that everyone was making. Number one, they had no digital strategy. Number two, they didn't understand that you have to approach every project as one part of a bigger whole. It's not turnkey. It doesn't end with functional acceptance. There's a whole series of mistakes that we saw them making. That coincided with Zach Scriven leaving engineering and starting a digital media company. And Zach asked me to sponsor his first podcast. And I don't know if it was $500 or whatever it was. And I was the first guest. And afterwards I said, hey, Zach, I want to help you out. Why don't I hire you and you just do digital media for us? And he goes, what do you want? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know digital media. It's not I'm assuming you're the expert here. So I said, here's the deal. We'll pay you, whatever, $5,000 a month, and you'll do a certain number of posts, and we're going to do YouTube and LinkedIn. And I said, but the deal is I won't be in front of the camera. So my approach to the business was, I have a guy, my chief experience officer is a guy named John McLeod. He's been with me since the very beginning. John's expertise in this business is he never puts me in front of the wrong person. Like I'm telling you right now, John and I have been working together 9 years, and there's only one meeting he ever put me in where I said that was the wrong guy. And he's done probably 1,000 meetings easily. He's put me in front of the wrong person one time. That is, our personalities weren't going to mesh. He was going to appreciate my style, that kind of thing. So our approach has always been to carefully choose who you put me in front of. Okay. So that's why I didn't want to be in front of the camera. Also, I think honestly, I think it's kind of pompous. I didn't want, I thought, who am I to go in front of the camera? So the deal with Zach was, I will not be in front of the camera. So for 6 months, Zach would fly out to our office. He'd shoot content, interview the engineers, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't in front of the camera, and nobody watched any of our stuff. And then, we would get like 100 views or whatever. Yeah. And then Zach said one day, 6 months in, because the board of directors was getting ready to pull the money because they weren't seeing any value out of it. And he said, hey, Walker, will you come out here? My editor is from the Philippines. He doesn't know anything about what we do. He goes, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. I want you to answer them on the whiteboard, and to help him, because I think it'll help him be a better editor. And it was what is IIoT? What's Industry 4? What's MQTT? And what's the automation stack? And I answered those questions on the whiteboard. He published the What is IIoT video on LinkedIn without asking for permission. And it went viral. It got like 100,000 views over the weekend.
Wow.
And then we realized, oh, that's what the market wants, education. And so, and since I have my graduate work in education, I was going to teach originally, it needed to be me in front of the camera. So that's how I ended up getting in front of the camera. I had to lament.
Well done. Look, I must say that in order to change the mindset that we've been stuck with for 20 years, and you've been at it for 5 or 6 years now, maybe even longer. And I get the sense from a lot of your videos, we both have a common, to put it lightly, dislike of consultants.
Talk about bullshit to be
yes,
quite
we do. Yes.
To sell hours at the end of the day that often deliver no return. And I really enjoyed your little spat with Gartner and a couple of others.
Yes.
And I would put some of the big vendors, OEMs, Rockwell, Siemens, in different layers, but they're also kind of talking this big mind sphere, digital twin, blah, 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 blah. If you, I don't know if you've had a lived experience where you're sitting across an executive and they've been sold by this dream, right? Which after 11, 12 years now hasn't actually materialized as what was sold 10 years ago.
Yes.
About it. It's evolved very differently. What do you say to them? Like, how do you like debunk the buzz and say, let's be practical, pragmatic, and go forward in a realistic way?
So I've told this story a couple of times. I don't know if I've actually told it publicly before. That is like on a public podcast.
Okay.
But here's how I essentially, if I'm talking to the plant manager and above, literally the very first question I ask them, let's say I'm in the room with the consultant. I get hired, by the way, all the time to like peer review McKinsey, Accenture. Okay. You know, so one of the things I'm known for in the market is a client will hire me or someone on our team to come in while Accenture is giving their pitch on Azure Digital Twin. And it's our job to ask the questions on behalf of the customer, right? That happens a lot. So I'll tell a story about that. So we got hired by a large multinational who we'd already been working with. We had been working with in one of their facilities. We had already done a digital transformation initiative here in Texas, and Accenture had sold I don't want to pick on Accenture. There's a lot of great people there, but this is the story. I mean, so Accenture has sold to the corporate IT group in Europe a vision of digital manufacturing execution across the entire organization. Now, anyone who's ever built an MES system, if you've ever built MES, you know that MES is not a product. Okay. A MES is a suite of functions that we wrap a name around it. There's the core 4 functions of work order management, scheduling, OEE, and tracking downtime, right? Those are your core 4 MES functions. But there's a whole suite of 100 other digital work instructions could be MES, but you may not do digital work instructions. Changeover management could be MES. Recipe management could be MES, right? Their warehouse management could be manufacturing execution, or it could not be. Just when you say SCADA is SCADA.
Yeah, and PLC is PLC, right?
PLC is PLC, but MES is not MES is not MES. MES is unique to your business. It really is, Well, what Accenture did was they sold to a company that didn't know any better, a large global multinational who wasn't using. They had instances of manufacturing execution in maybe 12 of their plants, and they had something like, I don't know, 140 manufacturing facilities. They sell them a vision, and then Accenture basically tours the world to all the different facilities and tells them what they're going to do. The facility we were working with hired us to consult. They took some of their MRO money and they said, we want you to speak on our behalf because we don't know any better. And we said, okay. So Accenture's, and they bring me in.
That's a level of maturity from that organization, which doesn't often happen.
Correct. And by the way, that was because of the 2-year journey we had been on with them. And they were like, you know what, we're more fluent than we were 2 years ago, but we're still not prepared, And so they bring us in. There was maybe 4 of us. I was the guy who was going to speak for our organization. I never even sat down. Accenture was already presenting. I come in and they have a reference architecture up on the screen, and it looks fancy. It looks impressive. They've got Azure Digital Twin on one side, and they've got edge devices over here, and the IoT edge, and going into Azure Core and all this stuff. And I'd never even sat down. I just walked up to the screen. They had a whiteboard, and I wrote 4 questions. And then I just drew a huge circle in the middle of their reference diagram. And I said, I have one question. And they said, what's that? And I said, how are you going to reconcile the structure of the data on this side, that is on the OT side, with the structure of the data on the IT side? Because what they were promising was digital twin is the way that we could simulate our processes in a contained lab environment, and we could improve them we could simulate them in digital twin, and then we can improve them and push those changes down to the edge. Now, by the way, Microsoft has been selling this dream of Azure Digital Twin for a decade now.
Yeah.
Accenture has built hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars of engineering. There's not a single functional example of this promise, not one. So I asked them the question, how will you reconcile it? And the Azure architect looked at me like he was livid. I asked the question, and then he said, well, we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that tomorrow morning. And I said, of course you are. Of course that it's going to be in a meeting. It's in the next meeting. So then I asked them this question. I said, where do you capture all of the raw events? So At the end of the day, let's say I'm a plant manager, I'm an executive. What is the most valuable thing in your business? The most valuable thing in your business is all the things that happen in your business. It's every decision that's made. It's every motor that gets changed. It's every work order that gets started. It's every downtime event. It's every failure. It's every planned failure and every unplanned failure. It is every improvement that you didn't predict. It's every deficiency you didn't predict. Those are all events. You need to capture those as digital artifacts. And one of the things I asked them, and now the average plant manager doesn't know that. If I ask the average plant manager, I'll ask this question, why is Amazon awesome? Or why is Tesla awesome? And I'll say, why is Amazon awesome? Why do you use Amazon? Well, I can buy anything for the best price and they ship it for free and I get it fast. And I go, how does Amazon do that? Yeah. Well, Amazon does that because they're a digital company. They capture every single artifact on one common infrastructure. And then they use machine learning and artificial intelligence to predict what you're going to buy 6 weeks before you buy it. You don't even know what you're going to buy 6 weeks from now, but Amazon does. And that's how they get the thing that you want to buy into the distribution center that it needs to be in so they can get it to you in 48 hours or less. How do they do that? Digital infrastructure. So you ask Accenture, how are you doing that for this customer? And the answer is, we're not. And by the way, this could be Accenture, it could be Deloitte, it could be Siemens, it could be Rockwell, it could be any of the people making these big promises. And why do they do that? Why is it they do that? Are they evil? No. They have enormous overhead. They have hundreds of millions of dollars in payroll they got to run every 2 weeks. Okay. They got benefits they got to pay for. They've got facilities they got to pay for. And they have shareholders they got to answer to who want an answer this quarter. Yeah. Guess what? Digital transformation takes time. Yep. You don't digitally transform in a quarter. Okay. You don't digitally transform in 2 quarters. Guess what?
Yeah. It's more like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah. It is a 3 to 5 year journey to just become smart. And in the first, and I tell every manufacturer the same thing. You do not cut a huge check. You never capitalize more than 1 year of the journey at any given time. And by the way, I think a year is a big window. Yeah. You start with, why do I want to be digital? What is my digital strategy? Why do I want to be digital? Here's the reasons I want to be digital. If you ask anyone at Tesla, they can answer that question. If you're a plant manager and you can't answer the question why I want to be digital, then you need to bring someone in who can help you craft that statement. Otherwise, you're just going to stand there and wait to lose. Yeah. Like Walmart lost to Amazon. Hate to break the news to people. Walmart lost. Tesla or Target lost to Amazon. I hate to break the news to everybody. Amazon they made the decision to be a digital company, wholly digital, in 2002 when Jeff Bezos sent that famous email. He spent, you look this email up. Bezos was a visionary and he said, wow, we do too many things manually. And so effective tomorrow morning, we're going to build services for every single piece of data we share in this business. And if you don't, you're getting fired, literally. So anyway, the fact of the matter is start with, what's my strategy? Don't ask any question. Ask any question or give any answer until you can answer this question. What is my digital strategy? 3 sentences. Why do I want to be a digital company? Because every other answer, every other question falls underneath that umbrella.
Yeah.
Right. First principles.
Yeah. And I think you've spoken about it. I think what you need to kind of convince the plant executives is that data is actually an asset.
It's a commodity. It is.
Quote on the side, right?
Yeah.
It's at least I'm in the automotive space predominantly, and we've had to collect data to prove that we were not wrong in the past. It was never any other reason to collect it, right?
And the crazy thing is, the crazy thing here is, I worked for BorgWarner Automotive. I was a tier 1. I was an engineer in tier 1, and I actually had a unique opportunity, and I'm very blessed for this. And I didn't know how blessed I was at the time. I know now. When I got my job as an engineer at BorgWarner, I worked in the old Morse chain facility. So we made timing chain, and we made chain for differentials. Okay, and we were our own OEM. So part of the reason I went to Chennai so many times is because a lot of the equipment that we manufactured I was a machine builder, and I was supporting manufacturing globally for the, we were vertically integrated. We would build our own equipment, and then I would support and maintain it. I was in punch presses making links. I was in the pin cutting machines that made the pins to put the links together, and then I was in the heat treat. So I did all of the machine design and all the support for those equipment. That equipment, we built all the equipment in-house. One of the things that Nissan was my big customer, and one of the things that always blew my mind was how Nissan knew nothing about how we manufactured our chain. They saw reports, but they didn't really know how chain was manufactured. Yeah. And one of the things that always stood out to me was, well, if they don't know how the chain is manufactured, if they don't know what the limitations are, then how can they improve the cars they're building if they're limited by our capabilities? Like they were completely ignorant to how chain was manufactured. Juxtapose that with Tesla. I talk about this all the time. Tesla built Warp. Tesla Warp is their digital infrastructure. And Tesla requires that all of the suppliers in their supply chain be integrated into Warp. So, for example, Saint-Gobain, who manufactures the glass for the passenger windows in a Tesla, to Tesla, Saint-Gobain is a connected subsidiary of the Tesla infrastructure. They can see all the process data. They can see raw material data. They can see quality data, all in real time live, because that is a requirement of being a supplier of Teslas, because Tesla is a digital company.
Tesla can see all of the tier ones.
All the tier ones. Correct.
That's
live.
amazing.
Live. They are unified. That's what unified digital supply chain is. This is one of the things I talk about all the time. Like, why is Tesla so amazing? The people who hate on Elon Musk, and I'm like, look at all the things that this guy has done just for humanity. I don't care what his politics are, his stance. I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Look, Elon Musk has led the organizations that have driven the concept of digital supply chain that we're all trying to model. And that is virtual vertical integration, right? Vertical integration through companies that are only digitally integrated. They are not business integrated.
Yep.
And that is how we fix the supply chain issues that happened during the pandemic. That's how we get to real just in time, right? And we have one of the soda manufacturers. So one of the soda food and beverage is one of our clients. And one of their goals with digital was they wanted single touch raw material. So their goal was, when raw material gets shipped to the back door of their facility, they want to take their raw materials and bring them right to the production line. They don't want to go to a warehouse. They don't want to have to build up surge capacity. And they were asking the question, how do we do that? And the answer was really simple. All you have to do is be digitally integrated all the way back to the supplier who's supplying the good that's all you got to do. So the vehicle management systems that they're using to track their trucks, you just need to be plugged into them. And we showed an example. We had 3 clients, one that makes ink, one that prints packaging, and then this soda manufacturer. We integrated all 3 of them together with a unified namespace in 10 minutes. All 3 of them were our clients. We did not know that they were consecutive links in the same supply chain. And we just said, hey, we can show you what's possible, the art of the possible. And when we showed this soda manufacturer, hey, we can make it so that this printed film that comes from this flexible packager will never have to go to the warehouse. You will always know where the status of your order, from you cutting the purchase order to when it's delivered. You will always know exactly the status in real time, so that you can plan your schedule accordingly. It was this for them.
Wow.
And that's one of the most state-of-the-art companies in the world.
Yeah.
So even they didn't understand the art of the possible, because they were still thinking the way they've been operating since 1910 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just back to the Tesla thing, I really think Tesla is a fantastic company. I'm 50-50 on EVs, but park that for a completely different discussion. But as a company, I think they're amazing. And I think I have a fairly good understanding of the car, especially the architecture, the electrical architecture, mainframe versus these modules as in a traditional car, allowing them to do over-the-air updates, add features, seat warmers, and also mechanically. I mean, I've got more of a mechanical background. The GigaPress, how they've redesigned the car to be manufactured 30% faster than a VW, for example. I mean, it's really amazing.
And the goal.
And yeah, it's massive. And I sit on the almost Elon Musk hater camp because he's disrupting what I know is normal, and it's like very difficult to kind of accept that, you know, the way I've been doing it in the last 20 years is actually probably shit, and I need to actually, you know, open my mind. It's actually not easy just to, I can understand what he's doing, but to accept that is very different. But what I don't know, because they don't talk too much about it, is their actual factory. You see some like cool drone footage and stuff, but you spoke about their, I would imagine, the ERP system that links into the supplier network, etc. Why would they have chosen? I believe they developed their own. What is it called again?
It's called Warp. W-A-R-P.
Why would they have done that? So I get the car design, innovation around the car, etc. And it's a digital, it's a smartphone on wheels, right? And you can change apps almost, and it's really smart. But why would they have gone and created their own digital manufacturing system?
Well, it's a really good question. The answer is they didn't start out that way. When Tesla, in 08, 09, in that period, the formative years of Tesla, Elon was under the assumption that there were certain things that auto manufacturers were doing that were good, and then there were some things that they needed to throw away. He came to the conclusion he had to throw everything away. But it took a couple of years of failure to realize, oh, wait, we have to totally redefine this from the ground up. Why did they build Warp? This is a really, really good question. The answer is they tried to use off-the-shelf solutions, but they realized all the off-the-shelf solutions had two limitations. Number one, they didn't do the things that people said they did. So if you go to SAP, like what SAP, I don't want to pick on SAP, but if SAP is supposedly the gold standard in ERP. SAP is an ORM, giving me the ability to build an object relational model for my business and then plug SAP functions onto that. One of the things that SAP never tells you is that you have to build your plant in SAP first. You have to build your business in SAP first. That's the first thing. It's the first step. Every other ERP is like that. One of the things that they realized was, well, we don't know what our business is going to look like. We're still figuring it out. So if what I do is I create this digital model, this monolith, and then I will be enforcing these rules on the future innovation of the business, or I've got to pay to make the changes to this monolith over and over and over again. By the way, that's SAP's model. That's how SAP makes their money, is you knowing you're going to have to make changes. So what they said was, what we need is a digital infrastructure that is a reflection of the reality. And that is, as things change, they change in our infrastructure, not we go to the infrastructure, make a change, and then impose it down on the plant floor. That was the initial motivation for Warp, because nothing in the market did that. Just think about, the best way to illustrate it is this. I'm in my home lab here. I'm not in the office studio. I'm in my home lab. I have servers everywhere. I've got probably 30 different PCs in here. I've got maybe 20 PLCs. What Tesla does is Tesla takes the approach, the moment I plug something in here, in this infrastructure, all I should have to do is define it. It's in this home lab. It serves this function, and this is its node ID, and then point it to an infrastructure, and it just starts streaming its data. And then if I take a node from here and I go back to the office and I plug it in at the office, the only thing I should have to do is change where it is. It's no longer in the home lab. It's now in the office lab. And then if I go to my infrastructure, it reflects that change. I didn't have to go to my database and change relationships between tables. All I had to do was plug it into the infrastructure. Tesla wanted that approach. So that's part of the reason they built Warp. The byproduct was, well, we can enforce this on our suppliers too.
Yeah.
They definitely didn't start with our suppliers are going to integrate with this. They realized what they did was they built a digital infrastructure that they realized was going to work for their suppliers. And then they took that step. So, wait, I want to say one thing about Tesla that most people don't know.
Yeah.
There's a report that came out. There's a report that comes out every year about the least reliable vehicles in the world. And I don't know if people know like how they measure reliability, but it's basically maintenance incidents. So it's the number of how many times the check engine light comes on, how many times you got to, change the oil, take it to the shop, all that kind of thing. The least reliable car company in the world is Chrysler under Stellantis, right? And it's basically for a brand new car, it's 500 incidents in the first 36 months. Now, an incident could be a check engine light comes on, or the auto wipers don't wipe correctly. They collect those number of incidents.
Yeah.
Do you know what the most reliable car in the planet is? And by the way, it's not even close. It's Tesla.
I'm assuming it's the Tesla, right?
It is 10 incidents per 3 years.
Wow.
The car after them is 100. So when you take the internal combustion engine, the ICE, the most reliable ICE car manufacturer is 100 incidents in 36 months. Yeah. A Tesla has 10.
That's a good argument for EV. I'll accept that one.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm in agreement with you. I own a Tesla. We actually have two. My son has one as well. I would never own an EV as my only vehicle. I mean, I also have a diesel pickup truck. So in the event of a natural disaster, I'm leaving in my truck. I'm not leaving in my Tesla. Okay. I mean, I actually believe that the future, certainly over the next 100 years, is going to be hybrid. But what Tesla is doing with EVs is driving that hybrid becomes the compromise, right? Yeah. But in order for you to settle on hybrid in the middle, there's got to be the EV example, and that's what Tesla's doing.
Yeah. So Tesla opened up ordering of vehicles in South Africa about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, because quite a bit before COVID. And I think you had to put a $2,000 deposit down, and then they closed it. They said, "No, South Africa is not on the radar anymore." And I'm like, "No ways, you're keeping my $2,000. The moment you open it up again, I want to be first on the list." So I have a.
Is that because of electrical infrastructure?
Yeah, look, our market. Firstly, there's 100% tariff import on electric vehicles, which is, you'll pay double the price. So that's the first problem. And the second problem is we are a relatively low-cost country. So I mean, we have all expensive cars, Ferraris and everything, but they sell really, really few. And so to set up the infrastructure for that probably doesn't make financial sense.
Got it.
I do know a guy here that imported two. He actually lives close to us. He's one of our suppliers. But they sell Tesla the power walls and solar systems for houses because of the power problem, as you allude to. And as part of his marketing, he drives around these two Tesla Model
That's why. Y. By the way, that's why I drive it. I drive a Tesla. I bought my Tesla because my team told me, you talk about Tesla all the time. You need to own one. And so what we did was I actually film in it. And because we film in it, it's a marketing expense. And so we get to write off nearly all of it, actually. So I mean, would I own a Tesla otherwise? Probably, but not a Model S. I mean, I would certainly own a Model Y or a Model 3. I bought a Model 3 first, but it was too small. I wanted the back seat was too small for my kids. But I mean, I've owned a lot of cars in my life. I've owned some really awesome cars. It isn't even close. I mean, the Tesla is the greatest vehicle I've ever owned, and it's not even remotely close. I mean, it's just, it's like driving a rocket ship. That's what I try to describe it as.
The acceleration is crazy. It's ridiculous. I'm a big fan of Tesla technology, Elon Musk technology, not necessarily the individuals, put it that way.
Well, I say this. I gave a speech. I gave a keynote address last month. in Boston. And I always start with why is Tesla awesome? Why is Amazon awesome? And if somebody and recently, a lot more people have not been saying Tesla is awesome. It used to be 100% of the room. And now I would say it's 50-50. And so I'll call on somebody who doesn't raise their hand. If I go, if you think Tesla's not awesome, raise your hand. And if they do, I call on them. I go, tell me why they're not awesome. And they never have an answer. I mean, they know the answer. The answer is I don't like Elon. Yeah. And if they say that, I go, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares that you don't like Elon? Like, how are you making your decision based on?
I actually think he's the smartest guy on the planet.
Yeah, he's an alien, man. He's really he knows everybody's job better than they do. I mean, do I agree with everything the guy says? Of course not. But I don't agree with everything my brother says. I don't agree. It's like, I don't agree
with what Elon says.
Right.
And he's South African, so I got to give a little bit of a flag there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your authenticity in what you do. I think that just in general in social media, that's a big gap. People say things because they want to be seen a certain way. Whether it's truth or not has become irrelevant, which is, I don't know, for me, maybe I'm getting old or something, but authenticity resonates with me. And authenticity doesn't mean I agree,
Agreed.
Being authentic and me agreeing. It's exactly the Elon Musk thing. I think he's completely authentic. Yes. I would imagine he is the guy that you see on interviews, but you don't have to agree with everything they say. And I think, I really appreciate that. And I'm pretty sure there's thousands of people that watch your videos appreciate it as well. So for me, thanks a lot. And I've learned a lot from you.
I know our numbers because the team shares with me like metrics and, hey, we touch 1 million individuals and they, it'll come up in a meeting. Hey, we just broke 1 million unique viewers across all. So we know we've touched 1 million different people. Right. Yeah. And we know that the size of our community is about 100,000. That is the people who watch basically everything and read, if you look at our podcasts, like the number of views it gets on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that stuff, it's enormous, like way bigger than what you see on YouTube. And we have a community of somewhere between 70 and 100,000 people who, and if you look at that, if you look at the percentage of people in our community who watch, it's much, much higher than across. And everybody will ask me, well, how did you do that? I'm like, watch the videos and you'll see. Like, I just go on. I never go on and go, oh, we have to produce something. Yeah. I mean, we're legitimately trying to educate. I mean, I'll share a little nugget with you. I recently experienced something. I feel like I have a duty to the community to tell it like it is from my perspective. Yeah. Right. I don't necessarily think I'm always right, but I do believe I have a perspective I should share because I'm in a unique position to share it. And recently, one of my companies had a negative experience. We had to fire a customer, and I got to be careful with everything. And I'm going to explain why I got to be careful. That what we realized was that we didn't share common values, right? We couldn't come to terms on how to operate. We've been working with them for a while, and I believe when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. And we realized we didn't share common values. But my ownership of Intelligent Integration, the fact that I own the integrator, ties my hands about what it is I'm allowed to say publicly about that situation. And I no longer want to have my hands tied. So part of the reason that I'm going to sell Intelligent Integration to the employees, to the team, is because I feel like my greater responsibility is to tell the truth to the community, good, bad, and ugly, right? And that's why Prove It. That's why we're doing the Prove It conference. It's why we produce it. We spend $1 million a year producing content.
Wow.
We spend $1 million a year. Every dollar we make from 4.0 solutions goes back into the business. So every dollar that students are paying, it is a break-even business. It is a break-even. We put all of it back in the community. We spend $1 million a year just producing content. And it's expensive, but it's worth it because of the impact. And I knew how many people we touched, but when I was at Hannover Messe, it overwhelmed me. I mean, the number of being in the EU for the first time at a show where we broadcasted it, there were thousands of people who came there to meet us. I mean, there was a guy who flew from Dubai to talk to me for 8 minutes. Like he literally came to the show to have a conversation with me. You know what I mean? And it was like, and he literally was there the whole week to try and find an 8-minute window. And it was right at the very end after I did a thing with Portainer and Mosquito Pro, the Sedalo guys. He stood there while I was talking to a big, huge group. And then the moment he saw an opportunity, he's like, and it really blew my mind how, the number of photos I had to take, hundreds of photos, which normally I'll take maybe 20 to 30 at a show. People will ask for a photo. It was thousands. I mean, it was nuts, man. It was, and the impact has just been huge. And the reason the impact is huge is because I think it comes from the right place. It is purely authentic. We want to have a positive impact, and hopefully it's working.
Yeah, well, take it from me as one of the 100,000 in your community. It's I've gained, and it's for free.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the amazing thing about it, right? I mean, I don't pay you a cent, and you don't have to do that, and it's really admirable. And I mean, I love this technology stuff and getting different perspectives. There's so much. I gained so much out of that. I changed the direction of my business from some of the things that I've learned from you.
And I've heard that, man, that I've heard a lot. I mean, we have a partner in Colombia who I've been working very, very closely with, an integrator that's been there for a while, and they fundamentally changed their business. I mean, literally, totally, they're like all in digital transformation, unified namespace, and their business just exploded. I mean, they literally went like 4x growth. I can't remember what the number is here, but one of the members of that integrator, they just told me like the number of project, they went from, N to 4N projects. They went from N to 4N employees. They had to upgrade their, and they were like, literally, your content made us completely rethink the business model. And that's just one of 24 that we work closely with, very closely. And when you came out, you came out and visited our office and we spent a day together, same thing. Our whole conversation was about how you were fundamentally changing the way you guys were going to market. Yeah. And by the way, you're on the right track. I mean, you're doing it the right way, which is why we're doing this podcast.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that.
And if I were going to tell anyone about digital media, this is what I would say. Do not produce content for the sake of producing content. Produce content, but ask yourself these 4 questions before you produce anything. So every time you shoot a video, every time you write a LinkedIn post, every time you do something on Twitter, why should anyone listen to me? So answer the question. Why should anyone listen to me? If you can't answer that question, shut up. Okay. Number 2, don't post it. Number 2, what am I going to say? Like, what is my message? And I think everybody answers that. Number 3, what is the audience going to hear? So and oftentimes that's different than what you're saying. Yep. And in order for you to answer question 3, you have to know who the audience is. That's the reason that question's there. You're going, oh, the people who are watching this are these people. They're probably going to hear this. And question number 4 is, what will the audience say is most valuable in this piece of content? And if you cannot answer those 4 questions clearly, don't produce anything. If you look, you've obviously you do your homework. If you look on our industry, most people who are producing content are producing garbage. You probably won't say that because you're a nice guy, but I will say, okay, the vast majority is garbage. And the vast majority of what people are producing, they don't realize how foolish they're making themselves look to the rest of the community. You'll notice when I post I don't post every Wednesday I post when I have something to say on LinkedIn. And most of the time, what'll happen is something might happen. I have a thought, oh, the community can really benefit from this. And I'll write I'll tweet it. And then our team takes it and turns that into a LinkedIn post and publishes it on LinkedIn. And then maybe the digital media team will go, Walker, you should do a whiteboard video on that. That's where this journey came from. It was never a goal to like become an influencer. That's why whenever, I win these awards for top IoT influencers and stuff, I never announce it. You'll never see me go on LinkedIn and go, I'm honored to be selected for this, because I'm not honored. I feel like all I really care about is A, being a voice for the manufacturer, and B, educating. That's what I care about. And I honestly believe that in this industry, the people who will be most successful in digital media are those who are authentic, transparent, and they ask themselves those 4 questions. I mean, when you see me on video, that is who I am. If you hang out with me, I'm literally the exact same guy. There's no difference. I just figure if people don't like what I have to say, then, we're not meant to work together. Honestly, that's my mentality. So that's where it came from.
I want to share my screen to talk about your favorite topic.
Okay.
Unified namespace.
Sweet.
So I'm actually busy writing a book, and there's a whole section about you and unified namespace, because I think it's such a fundamental, from a conceptual perspective, not that difficult to understand, but it's a fundamental shift in how we build our factories going forward. And this is a picture from the book I'm trying to put together. And I wanted to take the cheeky opportunity for you to crit it for me, and maybe allow me to explain it and tell me if I'm talking shit or not.
Okay.
So we're all familiar with this ISA 95 hierarchy, level 0 to 4, sensors, PLC, MES, etc. Right? I mean, that's been around for a long time. And ultimately, what's happened in the past is you've had to pass data from level 0 all the way to 4, and from 4 all the way down to 0. And all those white spots are where consultants make a lot of money.
Yes, that's where. In fact, those should be green, because that's where people are getting paid. That's where
Exactly.
and so the incentive is to keep it that way.
Yeah,
exactly. There's no why if I'm getting paid, why should I change it?
right.
That's right.
And from a conceptual perspective, the unified namespace, and this is where you could correct me if I'm wrong, is collecting the data from each of those layers in a unified way, so that each layer can understand what the data means.
Yeah, I mean that is a fair. It is a subset of what UNS is. Yes, that is a true statement.
Okay.
What am I missing?
Unified namespace is the structure of the business and all of the events in the business, raw, and then so if you look at level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4, you got to ask yourself, what in fact, let's take one step back and go, what actually is that? Well, if you look at let's look at level 2, monitoring and supervising. Okay. That is supervisor control and data acquisition, right? Yeah. It is, that's monitoring and supervision of a plant. And then level 1 is the monitoring and supervision and control of the process on the asset, right? So there's an intersection between the function at level 1 and the function at level 2. Okay. Well, they sort of work together, but they are different functions. All those are abstractions of functions of your business. That's all they really are. And someone created that structure, right? And the reason they created the structure was because the technology that existed at the time was poll response. The smart thing was always going to request for data. All right. Unified namespace really isn't possible at scale without edge-driven technology. That is, all the thing in the process control, level 0, can inform an infrastructure of all of its raw events. And then we can abstract from the infrastructure the function. So if you think about what MES is, an OEE calculation, it is a combination of data from level 0, raw events, where you're going to get state, in-feed, outfeed, and waste from level 0. You're going to get all the standard. You're going to get the work order. You're going to get the schedule, the bill of materials. You're going to get all the standard cycle time, all the things that we're going to measure against. from level 3, and you're going to get all of the business related data from level 4. Okay, so things like the coalescence of CMMS, work orders that were maintenance work orders that were opened up on an asset. What is planned down? What is scheduled downtime? What is not? That's going to come from level 4. So OEE is a coalescence of data from level 0, 3, and 4. And then guess where we put that? We put it back in level 3, right? If I want to get my OEE, I'm going to go to the level 3 layer to get that number, but it's going to be a number generated from data from 4, 3, and 0.
Yeah.
Unified namespace is saying, okay, let's do this. Let's have all the stuff from level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 publish into a common infrastructure so that there's a place for us to go get it. And it'll be organized the way our business is organized. Okay. So, and the most common model is ISA 95, 90% of the time, but it doesn't have to be ISA 95. Then what we do is we say, well, we have a new function we want to create called OEE, and it's a level 3 function. We want it to live wherever the level 3 stuff is. Well, all we do is we create a function in the level 3 namespace that goes and grabs the data from level 0 and level 4 and then publishes OEE into that same green infrastructure. What's important to note is that unified namespace at its core is built on edge-driven report by exception, lightweight technology. It is the structure of the business and all of the events, and we use that to build the functions of the business, and they live right alongside everything else. At the end of the day, that's what UNS is. For me, the problem I was trying to solve was, why would I ever want to go to I want a single pane of glass for all data and information in my business. That's what I want. I want one place to go get it. And if you look at the way that Accenture, McKinsey, Deloitte, Rockwell, Siemens, all the people we talked about earlier, they don't do unified namespace. They talk about unified namespace now because they have to. The market is forcing them to. But what they did was they did digital thread, where if you were to on the right hand side, what you would have had is an arrow that originates at level 0, and that arrow points straight up. And what they did was they did digital thread, where they argued, no, what we should do is thread data through the layers of the stack and then get it into the cloud, and then we'll do something with it. Guess what? That meant you have to spend dollars at each of those white levels. And if you make a change anywhere else, you got to spend dollars at each of those levels.
And those are 4 different vendors, and then you just...
Those are 4 different, at least 4 different vendors, right? Yeah. So this is an accurate representation of what UNS is. And here's an interesting thing. That's only possible over the last 10 years, right? Yeah. So what we talk about this all the time. Well, where does the human being, let's say you're a business that has automated the processes, right? You still have human beings. The difference is, if you go to you go to India, you go to Mexico, you go to China, and you look at manufacturing facilities in India, Mexico, China, Costa Rica, you're going to see times 6 employees. So for every, you may see 6 people operating on the same manual assembly line, whereas in the United States, or in a first world industry, you're going to see 1 person on multiple production lines, right? And then and where the resources are, where the growth, the manufacturing growth is higher up the stack. It's in data analytics, it's in engineering, it's in ML applications. But one of the things we talk about all the time is, let's say I've got manual processes. Do I need to automate my manual processes before I start digital transformation? The answer is not necessarily. You can make the human being the node. The thing that the data, the events, what is the data? All data is something that happened and when. It's a rising edge and a falling edge, or it's a real measurement. You can use human beings to do that. And that's what you do in manual processes. What you do is you give them an interface to collect those events and to interact with the digital infrastructure. But interestingly, what happens, we did this in Costa Rica in 2017 in a connectivity company that was highly manual. So we took that approach. We put in we did digital infrastructure, unified namespace, and then every operator was interacting with the digital infrastructure through a single pane of glass. So I was scanning a human being scanning the barcode, and then moving to the next step in the digital work instruction, collecting whatever the events are. You know what that ends up driving? You end up collecting the data that justifies the automation of some of those processes.
Yeah, exactly.
So you end up, you didn't start with automation. What you did was you started with the human interaction, collecting the events from human beings digitally. And then you decide, and I argue that those organizations automate more efficiently, because those who automated 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they just decided we're going to automate everything. They weren't making data-driven decisions on ROI. When you're an organization that's manually manufacturing and then putting a digital single pane of glass for your operators and collecting those events from the human beings, you now can make a data-driven decision on what we should automate and what we shouldn't. And they become much more efficient arbiters of what they should automate.
So the argument is digitize first and then decide where to automate. And it's interesting that that's our lived experience. I mean, we live in an environment where you say it's 6 people to 1 process compared to Germany or the US, for example.
Right.
And I like your idea of the human is actually the node now, and there are endpoints that you're just collecting from that. That's a cool analogy.
Yeah. In a food and beverage customer, a food and beverage customer had no way. Basically, they're a bakery, and they make dough, and they make the dough and they put the dough in trays. So they'll have 12 balls of dough in a tray. But inside of the machine that's dropping the dough in the tray, you may have a failure. Or the operator may take a piece of dough and, that doesn't look good, and they throw it out. So I may end up with 9 pieces of dough on tray 13. Yeah. How does the customer know that? The answer is they don't. They just see it in their yield. We had low yield today. And they see it tomorrow or 2 days later. Well, how are they going to track that? Are they going to put a sensor there? They're going to put a distance sensor? I mean, what are they going to do to track how many balls of dough are in the tray? Well, they already had a camera on the production line. So we already had a video feed. So all we did was one of our engineers said, hey, I can use that feed. It's high enough resolution. It's there. I can use that feed to train a model and accurately count how many balls of dough are on there. We don't have to put a vision system in. We don't have to do anything. I can do it in Python. We can install Conda. We can feed this feed in, and I can just do it in Python. It'll take me a day. There's a lot of those applications, right? Yeah. But what's the future state? The future state is closed loop business control of the business. So there are a lot of organizations that want to get to dark plant floors. So they don't want to go out on the plant floor unless there's a problem. So what they want is their employees to be people who are handling things other than the manual stuff on the plant floor. Okay. And how do you do that? Well, let's say you're that soda manufacturer. Well, one of the processes in soda manufacturing is they have a tank at the beginning of the soda manufacturing where they mix all the stuff in, and then they agitate it. They mix the syrup all together. They test it. And then when it's all ready, they inject the carbon dioxide, and then they fill it in the bottle, right? Yep. Well, what they wanted to do was they don't want to they want the recipe to adjust automatically. So instead of put in ingredients, agitate, somebody test it, put some more ingredients in, somebody test it, put it some more. What they want to do is they want to make that a process in and of itself. They want to be able to drop it in, see the results from the lab automatically, and then make the recipe adjustment closed loop. That requires artificial intelligence. Okay, so that requires that requires a series of machine learning algorithms. Plus, now what I'm doing is laying some other AI model on top of that to, running through a decision tree to make these types of decisions. Yeah. That's the future state. The future state is a lot of the things that you don't need, you're having people waste time on, right? A really common AI application right now today is in manual manufacturing. You will have operators give comments. You may ask an operator to put a comment in on a failure. like write a note.
Yeah.
A lot of people are using large language models. They're using things like ChatGPT. They prompt it to say, here, no matter who writes the note, I want you to take the note that they wrote and I want you to write it in this format, in this voice. Okay. So that now what we're able to do is normalize human input so that you don't see the uniqueness of the person, right? You take the uniqueness of the person and you format it in one common input. That's a really common one. And that's actually, Tulip is really driving that. The Tulip platform is really driving. They're the ones who are really showing the value of that right now because that's native in their platform. But that's another really common example as well.
And to normalize that data is such a powerful tool because typically that data is useless because you just can't make sense of it. There's too many different people's opinions and languages and spelling mistakes and all sorts of things. It's just not transactional enough, structured enough to make any use of it. And using language models to bridge that gap is an awesome use case.
And it's a simple prompt. It's so crazy. It's a simple prompt that does that. And then ultimately digital supply chain. So AI optimizing your supply chain. But that requires that you have something like Tesla where your suppliers are integrated into one common infrastructure. And most manufacturers are 5 years away from being ready for that.
We are born out of building machines. We're a machine builder. And then you have a different, let's say, section or vendor that I think is what integration is a system integrator.
Right.
So you have a machine builder, and you've been a machine builder before, and a system integrator. I've always wondered, I get UNS because we're building a digital business as well as a machine building business. But if we hadn't chosen to move in the digital space, I'd really be questioning, how do I take advantage of UNS as a machine builder? Like, what is it that I should be doing as a machine builder to be more UNS, if you want?
Well, what's really funny is when I get this question from machine builders all the time, and it doesn't take long for them to understand how they're going to benefit from it. So when we explain to a machine, when I worked for the tier 1 automotive supplier, we didn't build punch presses. What we did was we bought punch presses and then we added features on top of them. So we used Minster presses. So Minster is a company out of Ohio that hasn't built a brand new punch press in decades. They buy the old, big, huge 50-ton presses from people who own them. They take those cores and they rebuild them as a new press with state-of-the-art controls. When I first talked to Minster about a new press, we were buying a couple of, I think, 25-ton presses, and we were talking about the controls packages. The first question I asked them was, it was the very first meeting I ever had with them. I had been with BorgWarner maybe a month. I said, how is the data that you collect on this press, how is it shared with me? And they said, excuse me? And I said, how do you take what you've built and share it into my digital infrastructure? And then I showed them what I was building for BorgWarner. And they told me no one had ever asked them that question before. Now, that was in 2010, 2011. You know why? Because the machine builder is concerned with function, right? That should be their primary concern. Data, the data, what a lot of machine builders will do is they'll go, hey, there's valuable data on here. Let's build some stuff we can sell as an add-on to the customer, right? Let's take the data, let's build some software stuff we can sell as an add-on. But if they don't want the add-on, they're still getting the function from us when they buy the machine. Yeah. How does the machine builder benefit? What they really want to do is they want to give away the data integration. What they want to do is they want to put a unified namespace on a machine. That unified namespace is limited to just the structure of the functions of the business and all the structure of the asset and all the events. But you want it to support the technology most people are using. So generally MQTT, it could be AMQP, it could be DNP3, it could be a couple of options. I would recommend an MQTT. Yep. Then as a machine builder, when you land that machine on the customer, all you do is you ask the customer for permission to stream the data back to you. So think about it right now. You're a machine builder. You build an asset. How do you access your asset so that when they've got a problem, you have to VPN in, you got to modem in, VPN in? No, don't. The idea is get rid of all that. All they got to do is open a single port for you from that machine, and you're just going to stream your unified namespace into a broker that you own. And now you get to monitor all the machines you've sold across the globe. And what do you sell to your customer? You sell to your customer, I can make this equipment better if I can compare the performance of these assets across all customers. And we're not going to share anything. You know, it's not your intellectual property. It's just the events off the equipment we made. Moreover, what does the machine builder get out of it? They get remote access to their equipment without having to call in. It's just native. And then they also support the ability to take that same namespace and stream it to the customer. So now the customer, you can publish it to two brokers at the same time, one on-prem for the customer and one for you that you build your own functions on. And when you do that for when you show that to a machine builder, I remember there was this Italian printing press company, Comexi. When I did that original presentation to them 5 years ago, they were like, you know, they build like $25 million printing presses. And I was like, look at what we did. We built a unified namespace for their Comexi printing press for one of our customers. And then we just called them and said, hey, you should be doing this on everything. Here, look, here's the structure. Just add, you know, they had a back off IPC. You can put it on that back off and stream it wherever the hell you want to. And they were like, they looked at it and they were just like, their minds were blown. They were just like, that we just went 20 years in the future. But that's the answer to the OEM. That's the answer to the machine builder.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That's really, really, really great advice. MES, I assume that you're in the make.
Not
yes.
buy. Okay.
I'm actually in the position that you're gonna make it no matter what. Like whether you buy, let's say someone's selling you MES. I'm not saying you don't buy MES modules or buy MES software. What I'm saying is you need to know you're building MES. So if you're going to buy your manufacturing execution system, so say you are going to go, I'm comparing Traxxas, Aprizo, and Sepasoft modules at Inductive Automation.
Okay.
How do I choose between the three? Well, we're going to throw Aprizo away to begin with because Aprizo isn't conducive for you building. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to choose between Traxxas and we're going to choose between, and there are many others out there. I'm not limiting to these three. I'm using just these examples. And now I got it down to Traxxas and Sepasoft modules. Well, I'm going to go with Sepasoft's modules. Because they're inside of an open platform. They run inside of an open platform that makes it more conducive for me to build additional functions. You are going to build MES no matter what, no matter whether you buy an MES system or whether you start from scratch and write it all in Python and SQL, you're going to build. Like, don't fool yourself into thinking that your vendor is going to be able to provide all the functions that all of their customers need 100%. They're going to be able to provide, like, what should you buy? You should buy the OEE calculator. What should you buy? You should buy digital work instructions, right? But you should piece them together in a platform. Yeah. You're going to build. That's my position.
Yeah. I would agree with that. There's customers are too different.
Yeah. And MES is the digital representation of your manufacturing operations. Yeah. That's what manufacturing, and guess what? That's how you're competitive. Like manufacturing is not manufacturing. Like you could go to two companies you could go to two plants in the same company that manufacture the same things, and they will have deltas in how they do things.
Yeah, completely.
Right. And I say the old adage that, and why is it they're different? Well, because that's innovation. Yeah. The one thing most people don't understand about manufacturing, if I could teach anything, actually, it would be two lessons. If I could teach any two lessons to anyone who doesn't know manufacturing, I would teach these two. Number one, in manufacturing, there's only one thing that matters and one thing only, and that's production. Everything else is secondary. Okay, safety is secondary. The environment is secondary. No one wants to hear this.
Yeah.
Production is king. No one ever chooses the environment over production. No one ever chooses safety over production. They'll choose the lives of somebody over production, but they're never going to choose the injury. Oh, yeah, that's the risk we take. That's what they do, right? Production is king. Number two, in manufacturing, it's not static. Manufacturing is always evolving on every asset, in every area of every business, in every production line, in every plant. It is a constant state of evolution. And anyone who thinks that all you do is just land stuff on the floor and then use it as it was designed for 30 years in a row is kidding themselves. That is not how manufacturing works.
Yeah.
That's why continuous improvement plays such a huge role.
Yeah.
If I could teach any two lessons, it would be that. And that's the problem with MES.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
I think what most of your audience needs to hear is this. Digital transformation is a process. It is not a project. Okay? And it happens in two giant steps. Okay? Step number one is becoming a smart business. And that's a 3 to 5 year journey. And it's iterative. Okay? And it's all starts with digital strategy. Connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, solve. That's that 3 to 5 year journey. It happens in one location, happens in one production line, and then it scales to an area, and then it scales to a location. You learn. That's generally like a 1 year process. And then you decide to scale across the business. And that's a 3 to 5 year journey. And then the next big step is the digital supply chain piece. If you look, Amazon operates on a digital supply chain. Tesla operates on a digital supply chain. They did not do that on day one.
No.
Even the most advanced digital companies in the world, it was a 3 to 5. In Amazon's case, it was 8 year journey. Okay, think about that. That's the future. That's where everyone's going.